So it's a nice Sunday afternoon. The weather was roasting yesterday. It's changed a little bit. Welcome to Poets Time. And today I feel humbled to have a very, very special guest with me. This is a woman who has made Glasgow her home in 2018. She hails from the US of A. And she feels a strong connection, I think, to this part of the world. Her name is Anne Sikking. I met her through a project she's got underway called the City of Poets, Glasgow City of Poets. So she hasn't arrived to be passive, that's for sure. She's not resting on her laurels. She's here to do some good damage for us poet community. So yeah, Anne, she was Poet Laureate in 2021. She had heard about that after she arrived in Glasgow for an arts magazine in LA. And I think from that experience, she felt she wanted to do something about poetry in this city, which is why the City of Poets was set up. And talking to her about it, she's got these explosive ideas, Anne, I think, about, approaching motor companies and building companies and everybody to fund poets. She feels really strongly, I think, about what we all know in this city of ours is the plethora of art and often unpaid. And I think that's something she feels she wants to change, and power to her for that, because a lot of us just go on doing it. And Anne is definitely someone who feels that it should be valued. She's got an idea to set up, as she calls it, she's got a tribe of poet laureates in her home city of Glasgow. And I love that idea of the tribe of laureates. So I think she's got that. She's trying and moving forward with that. So check out the website. I've looked at City of Poets, been very impressed, been enormously impressed at looking at Anne's own website, which is www.annesicking.com. Poetry there, beautiful. And poetry that shows that, it's like a river of emotion from where she came from to here. I'm going to invite Anne to read now from her 12 quartets about air, earth, water, and wind. Yeah?
And fire.
And fire, my element. My element, how could I forget? Please welcome Anne Sikking.
Thank you so much, Linda. What a lovely introduction. Everybody says that of you, that you give that sterling introduction. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to start by reading 2 of the 12-line verses from this piece of work that I did over a year. And the 2 that I'm going to do are from the prehistoric section. I did it in 3 parts, 4 elements in 3 parts. So 4 in prehistoric, 4 in the years of settlement, and then 4 verses for the future, what we're facing. So these 2 are from the prehistoric, bearing in mind that Los Angeles was originally separated, the state of California was separated from the main continent by a huge lake, that it's a volcanic area. Those of you who know the Los Angeles area will know that there are tar pits with saber-toothed tigers and mammoths and things that periodically come to the surface. So there's a deep prehistoric history. So here we go. This one is air. Before us and the Mariposa blue, before liquid trees, human commotion, before great machines took off and flew, there was the sea, the wild, wild ocean. Boiling once, it carved its bed. Unseen, it pacified new sleep. We, barely hatched, dared its dread, fed off its might, the risky deep. Ahead of those here on the shore, the Tongva stood, perhaps hands to brow, scanning sunset hues for more, a mortal bridge from then to now. And then the prehistoric fire verse. Before us, a molten lava flow, before origin tales of floods or arc, before science ordered what we know was flare and blaze, heat and spark, seething, carving, hot and slow, fissures ooze, make magma kindle, forests, plants pressed far below, rise as tar pits and commingle, afraid, then brave against the cold, the light and shadow of the fire gave ancestors an elemental hold, fueling mastery through desire.
What a last line that is. Fueling mastery through desire. Can you say a wee bit more about that? Does it?
Well, the South Bay area of Los Angeles, and given that this was a laureateship to celebrate people and place, it seemed important to me that this area, which has the ocean running all along one side of it, and the massive Los Angeles airport as another border, if you like, and then a huge oil refinery, which sits right there on the coast, that used to be Standard Oil and is now Chevron. That sort of gave me the thought for the elements. And going back in time, the Tongva were the first people that we know of that settled there. And there's little bits of them left still in the landscape. And the idea that over time, they mastered fire. And over time, the volcanoes that had pressed the trees and the plants below, and we now see coming up in the tar pits, I wanted to capture that landscape of long before.
Yep.
The sort of Wild West settlers, long before the gold rush, what was going on that land before Europeans arrived. So that's what I tried to capture. And the other two verses from the prehistoric time celebrate the animals and the trees and the flowers that we believe were growing at that time. And was very exciting because I managed to get people from the museum, the Los Angeles Natural History Museum, to get engaged with this process with me and correct me where I'd got things wrong. And because I talk about prehistoric birds in one of the stanzas, I was able to get the scientists from the bird sanctuary north, who are also part of the California Fauna and Flora Watch Society, to engage with me and make sure that I got everything right and in the right order. You know, we couldn't have things appearing at the wrong time. So
that was great. That was great having that, isn't it? It's just like a wee bank, a wee encyclopedic bank at your back there.
Yeah, they were amazing, and they kept saying to me, "Well, it's the first time we've ever been asked to do anything with poetry," and I thought that was cool. That was really cool.
I love that image, and I think they set it up beautifully before the Tonga with his hand. Perhaps you said, perhaps hand on brow.
Yeah.
You know, just that hand on brow thing is, for me, it's double-edged insofar as you can be protecting or you can be hoping for something to be possible, or stepping back because it might not be. I just love that image, and I think you had set it all up beautifully before a human came in it. Yeah. So they were Aztecs or indigenous peoples of California.
Yeah, indigenous peoples, very ancient peoples, long gone, long gone. And the Mariposa blue in the first line, before us and the Mariposa blue is a little blue butterfly that lives only in that tiny space between the airport of Los Angeles and Manhattan Beach. It's indigenous and peculiar to that tiny bit of land. So who knows what their history is?
I mean, I think that this is a fabulous idea. How do you? I mean, because actually, both those poems sound more kind of pragmatic in their beautiful description, maybe except for the guy with the hand up. But I'm wondering, when you get to this future, I'm dying to read them. You know, the one I must get a hold of this to read the future quartets. Can you whisper a little bit about what happens?
Well, when you work for somebody, which is what basically a poet laureate is, you get asked to do something and they have an expectation of what you will do. I am going to answer your question, but I'm just going to go around the houses a bit. One of the things that happens is that you have to think about who's your audience. And whilst I myself might not always write in a standard rhythmic rhyming style, I knew it had to be narrative. I knew it had to be about the place. And I knew it couldn't be miserable. That people, it's a wide audience. You know, they had a 10,000 circulation and they wanted something that would be as readable to as many people as possible. So the final 4 stanzas are really trying to affirm that humankind has got what it takes to dig out of the mess they've created.
Good.
And so that's the propellant, if you like. Yeah, you know, we can do this, you know, but we just need to get focused.
Yeah, I was commenting to you earlier just about, I love that about your poem Cherry, which is on your Glasgow poems on your website. I absolutely love that poem, and you talk there about, I think, what you're talking about now, and a kind of resilience and a possibility that's there. And we mentioned earlier about the interest just now, and Hugh McMillan and Neil Young's Poets Republic this year brought Kimberly Blazer on, and who's also from an Indigenous American background, and she was talking there about that, you know, the Scottish history and your people's history is just steeped in, as you say, you could only be miserable. It's just torturous sometimes to read, even for me, and I like reading Scottish history. Sometimes I just get to a point I can't anymore because it seems an endless stream of blood, to be honest. And I think when I was reading the Cherry poem, I had a strong sense of resilience and possibility, and exactly what you're describing. We have it in us to overcome. And I was mentioning to you this woman saying, we have not drowned, we've not been allowed by empire. We steely, eyes forward, hoist our star-quilt sorrow half-mast, but we learn to steer. And that's what I felt reading your work, and I'm very keen to see the future ones, the ones you just described to me there. But there's if I can, there's a bit where you say, if I can read this from Cherry, it's a little bit, you say, in Govan, once a powerhouse of wealth, now bald, ill-plucked by southern greed, our lives among ruins, excuse me, that Westminster sucked dry. And yet people grin, but there is always a surprise, often quite literally around the corner, not far. I just love that. I love that. And I do feel that in this country, actually. I do feel that, given all of that, there's, well, humour helps. But that humour, you know, Greek tragedy, there's the tragedy and then the humour's very close by as a way of human beings surviving it all. I absolutely love that. And then I know that you have ancestry from the Trail of Tears, so I was reading about that, and that whole clearance thing obviously reverberated quite strongly in my reading of Scottish and Irish history.
I think the thing is to know your history, resonate with your history, and then make of it something forward-looking. I think it's often the case that we stop. We get the history and we talk from this position of this is where I came from and this is what happened to me and my people. And you know, I'm mixed heritage, so I've got it all going on, with plenty of reason to be resentful. You know, my grandfather, as we were talking about, you know, he was born on the res in Oklahoma and then snatched off it to be whitened. And what I want to do, hope I can do, is say, well, that's my history and that's made me who I am. But let's not stop there. Let's unite with the people that we're with and move forward in a common cause. And one of the things I have loved about Scotland, regardless of people's political persuasions, whether they're pro this or anti that, one of the things that I have loved about Scotland is that I have never had to argue with anybody, whether they're rich or poor, that things should be fair. Generally speaking, the people I have spoken with, some have been very well off and some have been not so well off. They've all agreed that things should be fair. They don't agree necessarily how you get there.
Exactly.
But they do agree that they should be fair. And it's the only place I've ever lived, and goodness me, I've lived a lot of places where I could say that. And it's, you know, almost makes me sort of tearful. I love that about Scotland. I love it.
I think that's very interesting because sometimes I don't realise how good and how rich that is as an emotional standing point until I'm not here. You know, you're somewhere else where it's almost like a caste system that people accept a lot and seem to believe they've got where they've got by some kind of inheritance that they could only get there. Whereas I think through the Scottish Renaissance, 18th century, you know, and possibly the fact that I'm never going to be an advocate of John Knox, but the fact that people had to learn to read in this country, just to read the Bible. But the fact is they had to learn to read. We had a fabulous education system. So there is something different. And I only see that when I'm elsewhere. I remember watching a documentary. It was a friend of mine who lives in New Hampshire had sent it to me, and it was a woman who was living in basically trailer trash housing, to be honest. That's what it looked like. It just devastated the house she was in. And they were speaking to her about the fact that she was about to vote for a senator who paid, I can't remember what the figures were, but it was like, you know, 70% less tax than she did. But she said, surprisingly, yeah, I know that. But that's because he is who he is. And I'm just who I am. And I remember being, that Catherine said, this is what I'm dealing with when I'm in the pub talking to people. It's not just people in trailer houses. People here seem to accept, well, this is where we're at, and it's some kind of your own fault, you know, that you didn't make it or your parents didn't make it. Now, whether that's that gold rush mentality or get rich quick, I've no idea. But I have seen it elsewhere as well. I mean, obviously, it's like blue-blooded thinking that some people should have, some people should have not. But you're right, I don't hear that in conversations in Scotland. I don't.
I know.
I'm interested to see how people act on their opinions, though, because it's talk can be cheap, and I do hear a lot of people talking like that, and then you ask them about certain things that they might do or might not do, and they're a bit more reserved about acting on these opinions. You know?
Yeah, I mean, there is a difference of opinion as to how that fairness can be established more widely.
Yeah.
But you never have to argue the first bit of the argument. The only time in my life I haven't started from zero. In Scotland, you start, you know, you're at a running start, you hit the ground running. Everybody believes things should be fair.
Welcome. Welcome. I hope you stay forever and don't travel anymore, Anne. Stay with us. So I have to say it's been wonderful talking to you. I'm going to launch myself somewhere onto that City of Glasgow Poets, and I wish you every fortune with it and your own writing, which is incredible, really. I will buy, if I can buy the quartets, I want them all, because I'm very interested to see how this progresses right through. I'm very keen to do that.
Well, because they've been published, although I have the copyright, they are on the website, on my website, sikking.com, are all 12 verses. So by all means, indulge. Thank you.
I will. Okay, I would like to say thank you everyone for watching this Poets Time. I've found it enormously interesting. It's stimulated me to go and read and learn, which is the best that can happen when you encounter a person. And I've encountered this woman. It's been very, very fortunate for me. So, Anne, thank you for your time, and I look forward to reading your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Linda.
Bye, everyone. See you for the next Poets Time. Look after yourselves. Bye.
Bye-bye.